Greetings to everyone on my channel. We continue to discuss the American space program. In the last episode, we left off with both the Soviet Union and the United States beginning preparations for human spaceflight by the early 1960s. As per our established tradition, to better understand and evaluate American achievements, we will compare them with Soviet ones. However, the amount of material is increasing, including new information even for me. To avoid overloading viewers with too much information, today I will only discuss the Soviet Vostok program. We will cover the American Project Mercury in the next episode. By 1960, the Soviet Union had developed a launch vehicle, a spacecraft, and a group of cosmonauts for human spaceflight. The launch vehicle, which we are already familiar with, is the R-7. It had become a three-stage rocket, now known as the 8K-72 Vostok, and could place a payload of up to 5 tons into low Earth orbit. The Vostok spacecraft was also created, weighing 4,730 kilograms, with a length of 4.4 meters without the third stage, a diameter of 2.3 meters, and a habitable volume of 1.6 cubic meters in the descent module. There was little space, so the amount of equipment and instruments was kept to a minimum. It was intended that the entire mission would be conducted in automatic mode, with the cosmonaut having little ability to influence or intervene in the flight. This led to some jokes that the first Soviet cosmonauts were more like test subjects than pilots. The descent module itself was made in the shape of a sphere from aluminum alloys. Its center of gravity was offset so that during re-entry into the dense atmosphere, the cosmonaut would be facing backward to reduce the G-forces experienced. However, Soviet engineers considered all possible scenarios, including re-entry at any angle. Therefore, the entire little ball, as it was called by the cosmonauts, was uniformly covered with an 8-centimeter layer of thermal ablative shielding. This shielding was a mixture of epoxy resins and various polymers, weighing between 838 kilograms to 1.5 tons according to different sources. As it burned away in the dense atmosphere, it carried away excess heat from the descent module, preventing it from overheating. The cosmonauts breathed regular atmosphere, air at normal pressure, inside the spacecraft. This is the kind of spacecraft that was created. Its first prototype, designated Vostok 1K, was launched on May 15, 1960. This was the aforementioned Sputnik 4, which failed to re-enter the atmosphere as planned, re-entering only in 1962, breaking apart and its fragments falling on the territory of the United States. The next prototype, designated Sputnik 5, was launched on July 28, 1960, with dogs Chaika and Lisichka, but unfortunately, the launch vehicle exploded at the start. The next launch under the same designation, Sputnik 5, took place on August 19 of the same year. On board were dogs Belka and Strelka, 40 mice, and 2 rats. The launch was successful, and all living creatures returned to Earth safely. This was the first orbital flight in which animals successfully landed. The next launch, Sputnik 6, occurred on December 1, 1960, with dogs Pchalka and Mushka. However, it was calculated to land outside the Soviet Union, and for secrecy reasons, it was intentionally destroyed. Sputnik 7 was launched on December 22 of the same year with dogs Ko-Meta and Shutka. The spacecraft failed to reach orbit, landing 3,500 kilometers from the intended point. They searched for it for several days in temperatures of -40 degrees Celsius and eventually found it. The dogs were alive, and everything ended well. The next spacecraft prototype, designated Vostok 3Ka, with A standing for automatic, was fully adapted for human mission and, under the name Sputnik 9, was launched on March 9, 1961, with the dog Chernushka, 80 mice, and 2 guinea pigs. This launch was also successful, with the dog returning safely. Finally, on March 25 of the same year, the previously mentioned Sputnik 10 was launched with the dog Zvezdochka and a life-size mannequin named Ivan Ivanovich. Sputnik was put into orbit and landed safely, after which it was decided to launch a human into space. For this purpose, the first cosmonaut corps was created. Military pilots were selected, aged 25 to 30 years, no taller than 175 centimeters, weighing no more than 72 kilograms, and in excellent health. Any candidates who did not pass the rigorous medical examination were mercilessly rejected. The first group was formed. The initial 6 included Gagarin, Titov, Milyubov, Nikolaev, Popovich, and Bykovsky. Later, Milyubov and 2 other cosmonauts were expelled from the group for excessive drinking. Thus, on April 12, 1961, the flight of Vostok 1 with Yuri Gagarin on board took place. He completed 1 orbit around the Earth. The mission lasted 106 minutes. Previously, it was thought to be 108 minutes, but recent calculations showed it was actually 106 minutes. The spacecraft did not re-enter the atmosphere perfectly. The equipment module took a long time to separate from it. Because of this, the spacecraft spun somewhat, causing Gagarin to experience high g-forces. Instead of the expected 6 to 7 g, the g-force was likely around 8 to 10 g. At an altitude of 7 kilometers, the automation system activated, ejecting the seat with Yuri Gagarin from the descent module, and they landed in the Saratov region, approximately 3 kilometers apart. This type of landing was planned because Vostok spacecraft did not have soft landing engines, and the engineers decided that impact with the ground could be dangerous for the cosmonaut. Therefore, a separate landing system was adopted. Incidentally, because of this, the Americans did not recognize this mission as official for a while, since the pilot landed separately from the spacecraft. However, the disagreements were soon resolved, and the Americans recognized the flight. On August 6 of the same year, the Vostok 2 spacecraft flew with German Titov on board. The mission lasted over a day. Initially, Titov felt very unwell, as he reported to the Mission Control Center. He vomited. However, he eventually recovered. During the flight, he managed to sleep, eat, and use the toilet. All of this was already provided for on the early Soviet spacecraft. He then successfully returned to Earth. The next missions took place a year later. On August 11 and 12, 1962, the Vostok 3 spacecraft was launched with Andrei Nikolaev, who spent almost 4 days in orbit, and the Vostok 4 spacecraft with Pavel Popovich, who spent about 3 days in orbit. This set another record, as it was the first time 2 manned spacecraft were in orbit simultaneously. Finally, the last missions of the Vostok program took place almost another year later. On June 14, 1963, the Vostok 5 spacecraft was launched with Valery Bykovsky. He spent almost 5 days in orbit, which still remains the all-time record for the longest solo mission. Finally, on June 16, 1963, the Vostok 6 spacecraft was launched with the first female cosmonaut, Valentina Tereshkova, hastily prepared for this record. She was described as a simple Soviet weaver who attended a flying club. During the mission, she felt very unwell. She spent about 3 days in orbit and experienced either menstruation or premenstrual syndrome. During the flight, she had several hysterical outbursts, vomited throughout the cabin, and threw some instrument that was at hand into the quartz window. After examining the landed spacecraft, experts believed that the window almost cracked. As a result of this flight, Sergei Korolyov allegedly said, "As long as I live, there won't be another bitch in space." Subsequently, the hastily formed first female cosmonaut corps was immediately disbanded and was only re-established in the late 1970s when a similar corps was being prepared in the USA for shuttle flights. In February 1964, the Vostok program was closed and transitioned into the Voskhod program. A total of 6 manned missions and 6 unmanned missions were conducted, with 1 launch vehicle accident occurring at the start. That is a brief summary of the Soviet Vostok program. We will start discussing the American Project Mercury in the next episode. That's all for today. Goodbye everyone.